Now I think we're live.
Yeah, now I see the
Success
live
live.
button. Amazing. All right, you did it. Yay us. Um, being here in Laurel Canyon, yesterday was like an epic, glorious day of like birds and
Mm.
jasmine and sunshine, and I had so much fun rubbing it into all my New York friends. Since I spent 19 years there, I feel like I've kind of earned the right to say you can have other choices, but ultimately, I also do miss a snow day. But
Yeah, no, the city did a great job cleaning it up. The only thing is, like, we're in Chelsea off 7th Avenue, so you get, like, those massive slush pools.
yes, I
Those
remember
are
trying
not
to use a
fun.
stroller through those back in the day. But, well, I'm so psyched to chat with you. I was trying to think last night when I was contemplating all the different ways we could kind of take this conversation, but I feel like I first met you when I was at Spring. So I think that must have been
Yeah,
2015-ish maybe,
it
and
was. We were talking about Odin. I had a
right,
fragrance
so I
brand.
was pitching you to join the platform when you're at Odin. So at that point, and I know, you're one of these serial entrepreneurs. I think you even call yourself an eternal beauty entrepreneur. And as I was looking back at your history, it's like co-founder, co-founder, founder, built, all from like day one. And so, I always love to just kind of start at the beginning and hear a little bit about where that early journey started. I know you were OG at Bliss, which was
Yep.
also just epic in the day and really changed the standard for so many things. So I think innovation has been an ongoing theme with you. And is that what attracts you to each new project, or kind of walk me back?
Yeah, I kind of feel more of like an accidental entrepreneur because I do not come from an entrepreneurial like family at all. Sort of the antithesis of that. My brother was in the Navy, so you don't really get much different. Um, but I think I kind of got the bug at Bliss because Bliss was very early in my career. I ended up there by complete accident. It was a random decision I made. Um, and because of my background, Marcia had this idea of wanting to launch a catalog, which
Mhm.
like
And she had the product ready and the spa already?
no,
What
she
okay.
so the spa didn't exist yet. The way I ended up there was a friend of mine. I was in a really kind of bad situation working in the fashion industry, and I worked for a crazy person, and no one would hire me. But
Because of
when
the case.
you're like because of who I worked for, and they were like, "Well, if you quit, we'll hire you." But my 25-year-old self was like, "Is that a thing?" I got rent to pay, and it got really bad. And, uh, like, I was getting migraines, like, it was that kind of environment, and this friend of mine was like, "Just come work at this spa. I'm gonna be running it, it's gonna open." Marcia had Let's Face It before that, so she was a
Yeah.
known entity. He's like, I need front desk people." And I'm like, "Okay." In full transparency, I will not be good at that, like, because I would fill in, when our receptionist would go get lunch, I would be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll cover for you." I was a disaster, like, I
Mm,
can multitask, but not in that way, and he's like, whatever. Just come here for the summer, and you'll figure it out, right, in fall, because nothing happens in the summer." And then Marcia saw my resume, and I was running production and sales for a leather supplier, and it was like a $30 million business, which in 1996 is a sizable business,
seriously, in your 20s.
especially when you're, like, down the supply chain,
Yeah.
and so I was selling leather skin. I was running production and sales, for one of the top leather suppliers who was
Okay.
selling leather. I got there through Chrome Heart, so it was like a referral, and
Okay.
started as, the owner's assistant, and then sort of was running production and sales before I knew it,
Well, that is kind of
and
how it was back then. I remember I
it
did I
was.
or answered the phones and I was in sales in 3 months,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, so Marcia saw my resume. She's like, "I want to do a, uh, a catalog. Maybe your friend can do that." And so we met, and I was like, "I have no idea how to do this." And she was like, "Well, we don't either, but, I don't know. You're not going to get a job in the summer. Come try it.
Okay.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and whatever." And so that is literally how I ended up at Bliss. I was living in the East Village. She lived in the East Village. I was working out of her apartment
Mhm.
because we were she was a distributor of this hero product called Vitacombi. I don't know if you remember. It was an oxygen cream.
Okay.
And so there was this story in Vogue that had Vitacombi, creme de la mer, and this bone marrow cream that doesn't exist. And literally, that article is the article that built Bliss.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we were filling phone orders of Vitacombi. Um,
And she was just a distributor on it, so she wasn't
she
a
was just a
owner. Yeah.
distributor on it and was using the product, and let's face it, and kind of made it famous that way.
Got it.
Um, and so, yeah, I ended up at Bliss figuring out the catalog. Um, got told no a million times, but didn't know any better. And so there from the beginning until it was sold to LVMH.
Wow.
And that was like March 1996. It opened, and then it was sold in like 99.
Wow.
Um,
That's a pretty quick turnaround, especially for such an innovative idea, right,
yeah,
to start that type of a company.
yeah.
Uh,
So that's kind of when I got the bug.
okay.
Um,
Build stuff.
and yeah, and then sort of started my first agency when because people I had a lot of inbound yeah, and that was sort of how I ended up being an entrepreneur was just, you know, I think the first step was setting up the consulting,
Yeah. Okay.
um,
And
and
so now
wrapping my head around
you're
the
still
fact
late
that
20s? Are you
sorry.
your late 20s still at this point?
So
Or
the
are you
so I yeah, it was my late 20s.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to, like, almost so your first business that you built on your own
Mhm.
was, pretty young, I have to say, and then all the other side hustles I think that you picked up along the way. Um, I know we met when you were at Odin, and that's a co-founder situation as well, and so you had the agency and then realized, "I'm gonna now build brands."
Yeah, I wish it was that sort of, it was that considered. I think it was more I guess I've realized that I have a healthy appetite for risk.
Okay.
I think and the risk is always balanced by excitement about something.
Mhm.
So I had my first agency was called Chemistry at a thought lab, and I was doing sort of concept to counter advisement and also advising people on direct mail and how to do catalogs and retail. Um, and then I had a startup before Odin called Rescue Beauty Lounge. So it
Oh,
was
right.
owned by
Right.
G-Beck, right?
Yeah.
And I was one of her clients, and we launched the product range together.
I mean, that was also kind of a first in the
Yeah.
door. Right.
We were the first nail lacquer brand to be on the shelves of luxury and premium
Yeah.
retail. So we were on the shelves of Barney's, which I don't know how great an idea it was because we were still judged by the same turn and we were selling, $20 nail lacquer next to like $100 cream.
Right, right.
But yeah,
The
so
sales
that was my
was
first.
a little bit lower.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's also an amazing stamp of approval. Obviously, Barney's is the brand builder,
Yeah.
unlike any other, and so, it
It
feels
was
like
also the brand killer, but
yeah.
that was Odin. It was the last nail in our, coffin,
Oh, wow.
unfortunately. We got wrapped up in the bankruptcy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, which is of no fault of any brand in that
No.
space, and so many people took that hit, unfortunately, and, the rumors of bringing Barney's back, they keep coming and going, and whoever owns the license, but I think, it's just you can't kinda recreate the magic at this point, but because it was such an epic time for all of us. That's when I was at DVF and, we crawled out of the Bloomingdale's, and once we got to the floor of Barney's, our whole trajectory changed in that brand.
I don't think anyone's really filled that space. It
No.
still feels like a massive void, not only in the retail landscape of New York, but I think at least for beauty in the US.
So who do you think does kind of, bring I mean, Violet Grey obviously is where I was at, and we definitely felt like a bit of a launch pad, but in a
Mm.
very small way. Who do you think is kind of the arbiter at this point, or who can really help a company get from, even just visibility, right, to volume, in that way of just has a little bit of patience, because I think that's the challenge right now, is that the expectations to perform, right off the gate are high. And then obviously it's a pay to play world in so many other ways. And you work with a lot of indie brands. So do you do any kind of advising around retail, and you see it from both
Yeah,
sides?
I mean, I used to. I sit on a couple boards and do a kind of advisory work in that capacity, but yeah, I mean, if interesting projects come along, I'm still kind of
Okay.
game. But those are few and far between. BeautyMatter is sort of a full-time gig at this time, but
Uh,
I think part and parcel of the coverage that we do at BeautyMatter is sort of understanding how brands get built, how they scale, why they don't. Having been through business cycles before, I mean, what we're in now feels a whole lot like 2020 or 2008.
yeah,
Um, but I think in terms of, you know, is there a Barney's in terms of sort of from brand awareness? I'm not sure it's that easy anymore.
yeah.
Um,
There's
you
so many places to show up now at the same time to have the impact, I think.
yeah, but if you just keep it to brick and mortar, I think everything has just gotten like it is so difficult to self-fund a
Mm,
business. So if you have venture money or that's the path you've chosen is to fundraise and get growth that way. I think the obvious are there's four options. It's Target, Walmart, Sephora, Ulta, pick your flavor.
yeah, yeah,
Um, you get scale fast. But there's uh, that is a whole ball of wax and you
yeah,
have to be prepared. I think on the other side, um, I think to a certain extent, we've seen from startups that were on our next 50 list, there was a big chunk of them that were self-funded and they had gotten, call it $5 to $10 million, which in the day, we live in the $100 million brand
yeah.
startup. Like getting from $5 to $10 million on your own,
It's really
that's
hard.
a lot of work and it's a
Yeah,
huge accomplishment. And I think people underestimate what that takes.
yeah,
For me, that shows a brand that can grind it out and they're ready to go to the next step. And the combination we've seen is they've built it at Blue Mercury,
okay, interesting.
Nordstrom,
Yep, like
and
neighborhood
yep,
oriented.
and so with Blue Mercury, you get 150 doors, like, you can get a bit of scale there.
Mhm.
Nordstrom, you can get some scale there. And then it's usually rounded out by Cosbar, Credo,
Deep shots. Yeah,
Independence.
yeah.
Yeah, and then sort of the online, so D2C and Amazon. And so if you can get that moving, like, you can get to 8 to 10 and build some brand awareness and then take a more measured, um,
Approach to
next
that.
step,
Yeah.
to a bigger
How
reach.
do you see Amazon in that function? Because back in the day, it was definitely seen as, like, not where you go, right? And now I've seen that really shift. A lot of companies are obviously born on performance in Amazon, and then they move into wholesale. They have a small D2C in their Amazon business, and it doesn't seem to be a detractor anymore to luxury consumer. Obviously, brands are in the luxury space there, but I still have people kind of cringe at the idea in the beginning of their conversations of where do I bring this product? How do I think about this? Um, and,
Well,
margins are different everywhere, but what would you
yes. So I was a very proponent early on Amazon because I saw what was happening. I had a client that was in the men's space.
say?
Um, they were kind of one of the very early online retailers in men's called Grooming Lounge, and I did a catalog for them, and obviously it dovetailed to their online business, and they were selling sizable brands on Amazon, and the brands just didn't care. They're like, I don't care,
Yeah,
right? I'm not gonna do it, and I saw the numbers, and that's when I started telling brands, like, "Hey, you should really start looking at Amazon,"
yeah,
and
on this.
and I got the, "You're crazy,"
Mm,
and I was like, "Okay, well, if you're gonna say no to millions of eyeballs, like, that, like, intellectually makes no sense to me." Um, Fast forward today, you can either and not even today, I mean, even 5, 6 years ago, you could choose to be on Amazon or someone's gonna do it for you.
Yeah.
So
A
there's
third
that,
party
like
retailer or somebody that you're it's already in
yeah.
your, distribution, yeah,
So, do you wanna play offense or defense?
right,
And then I don't think the question is, should you be on Amazon? I think the question is, how you wanna show up there.
yeah,
Um, and, are you gonna use it as a growth lever? Are you gonna be defensive just to use it to maintain margin?
mhm,
What are you gonna use it for? But I don't the days of, I can't be there,
yeah,
uh,
I
I
I
don't know
agree,
that that's really an option.
I think you're right. I think it's not a channel to kind of overlook, and I'm on a text chain with a bunch of beauty founders today that they said, "Who are you using for Amazon?" And, like, 5 recommendations, fly up, and so it's that then it becomes, "I'm there, and how do I actually run this business? Do I outsource it to an agency? Do I hire someone in-house?" And that tends to be the challenge with indie brands and emerging brands in general, where it's like, who do you need to help you full-time run these businesses? What are you outsourcing? You obviously look at a lot of technology partners
Mhm,
like you do with the board, and it's because I know you've got your boot camp, which I'd love,
mhm,
to do a little deep dive into that as
yeah,
well. It really is the journey and all the decisions you make along the way, where you're putting that capital, where you're bringing the human capital, who you're partnering with, and that's where we see so many companies at the board, get off track. It's hard to get back on track, right? And so, how do you, when you're bringing the community that you have together?
mhm,
So, to take a step back, Beauty
mhm.
Matter to me is the ultimate beauty community, and as someone who runs community, also, that's it's not an easy business, but you're constantly connecting and joining and bringing value
Mhm.
to this community, and that's so much of what you do at these conferences and with the boot camp. And I feel like everybody is going through this really rapidly changing world together, right? Technology
Mhm,
is changing everything. The barrier to entry has shifted dramatically, but it's also harder. It's very crowded in beauty. I think 2 years ago it seemed like beauty is a no brainer for companies to go into, and now it feels like it's just there's too many places to purchase
mhm.
and things to purchase. So as you build your community and you think about who you bring to the stage, where you put your effort, tell me a little bit about your perspective on that landscape.
So, I find it I find it I find it interesting in many first of all, I'm very happy to be an observer at this time and place and not owning a beauty brand. And I give so much credit to founders who are sort of making it work in this environment because it's tough.
Yeah.
Um, but what I do think is that there's a major reset happening right now. Um, and I think and it's happening in two different ways. I think in one way there is sort of a structural realignment happening on where and how consumers shop.
Mhm,
I think that's dovetailing with a sort of the creator economy and it getting more sophisticated, creators almost becoming retailers, kind of the unlocking of social selling and live streaming in the Western market. So I think there's a lot of dynamics that are at play from a distribution standpoint. I think there's also a kind of going back to basics.
mhm,
Um, from a capital standpoint. So, you know, 10 years ago, like venture capital and beauty did not exist. You launched a brand either with your own money or you got friends and family.
mhm,
You scaled it to a certain point. If you were looking for a strategic exit, you scaled it to a certain point, got some PE, scaled it, sold.
mhm.
There were far less brands. And then we saw D2C come, kind of think we were reinventing the wheel. You had crazy like textile valuation. Like none of the math made sense. Like I don't
Right,
have an MBA. I call it Kelly math. It's very common sense. Like rocks are hard, water's wet. Like I know how to keep the lights on. And I'm like, "These numbers don't make sense."
Yeah.
And so I think that money has cycled out, but I think what we do have is some brands who listen, if you wanted to compete, you had to raise money,
Yeah.
right? So whether you wanted to or not, you it was the decision was made by the market because that's what you did.
Right.
Um, and so I think you see some brands now that they grew fast, they didn't grow fast enough,
Mm,
and they have the distribution, they were really buzzy, but they haven't bridged the launch buzziness into the building a business,
right. Right.
and so you have a lot of these, like, zombie brands out there, like, they're shells of what they once were.
Yeah. You kind of lost the
Um
why.
Yeah, and I think the sobriety on the capital front, I actually think as hard as it is, it's good for everyone,
Yeah.
because I think brands and founders are thinking differently about raising money.
Yeah.
I think they're focusing on profitability, and, it ironically, I think the impetus of this was D2C, and ironically, I think the growth lever moving forward is going to be brick and mortar retail.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. I
Yeah.
really do. And it's the whole social selling, which is a whole other ball of wax, and TikTok shops, and we partner with Shop My at the board, and they just, I mean, had an insane impact on the industry, and that's no sign of slowing down and thinking about who was who are your ambassadors and who's actually promoting your product. I think you're right. They're becoming retailers in a way. The shift from macro to micro and all of these other
Yeah.
things, and so.
But I think brands have to get at least sort of earlier stage brands.
mm,
I think brands have to get comfortable with going slow again.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
100% agree. When I hear people saying they're gonna exit in 3 years or whatever, or that's the goal, especially in some of these celebrity-driven or influencer-driven brands, that do have venture eyes and venture dollars behind them, and it is with this, like, speed to exit, which I just don't think there's staying power in those brands after 2 years even, to your point of
there I
the
think
buzz.
there may be, but I think you don't know at
Right.
2 to 3 years.
Right. I mean, well, tell me a little bit about, just the Beauty Matter philosophy right now, because obviously I know you guys are looking at global. Um, I think for people that don't know as much about it or have come to a couple conferences, how are you seeing that in the framework of the industry right now?
Yeah, I think that first of all, Beauty Matter was launched as an idea that turned into a business.
Mhm.
So and I also think is the byproduct of, yeah, I launched 2 brands that coulda, shoulda, didn't sell.
Mm,
It's not that, and for various reasons that brands don't sell.
right.
Um, a lot of them around founders and capitalization. Um, if I have one more person tells me, "Oh, Odin was like, what a missed opportunity." I'm like, yeah, totally clear on that. But I would also say that if one of those businesses had sold, Beauty Matter wouldn't exist.
That's
So the
exactly.
universe had different plans for me.
That's the way to frame it.
And I don't think of them as failures at all. Like, I'm so proud of those businesses and what we created and the path that we the path we helped create for other brands that did have more success in a traditional way. So I'm proud of it, and it was just like one step along the path, but it's like all of that informs what we do at Beauty Matter because we've been there. We are building a brand, we are founders, so I've been
It
in the
it
beauty
makes a
industry.
difference, I think, by having
Yeah,
that
and
operating.
we are part of the beauty industry. So we are the community we serve,
Yeah.
right? And one of the reasons I created Beauty Matter was that there was no media ecosystem when this was banging around in my head, which it banged around in my head for like 3 to 5 years before I launched it because what do I know about running a media business? Like, I built brands, I put goop in a jar, like that's what I did.
Mhm.
But like I couldn't shake it. And I built intuitively against what I didn't what wasn't there for me in the industry. And I think right now there is and not a robust, but there is a B2B ecosystem. So we've
Yes.
got Business of Fashion and Vogue Business and Glossy and Beauty Independent. And yeah, they're competitors, but I think it's everybody has their own community, everyone has their own angle. And more than that, like the industry is big enough for all of us.
Yep, I totally
Um,
agree.
so
Agreed.
I think it's good for the industry, but like, I we've built what we know. So I've never worked at a big beauty brand. I've always been on the indie side. So, our audience is sort of beauty brands, retailers from
Mhm.
startup to the strategics. But if you go to one of our events, the bulk of the people in the room are founders and leadership teams of independently owned brands, right? So
Yep.
these could be a $1 billion brand like Casanova that's still independently run, or someone doing a couple $1 million. But when you are independently run, like there's a different mindset of how you navigate. And so from a brand perspective, that's the community that shows up live,
It's
digitally
so
and
frustrating to go
leadership.
to these events when you're growing and hear from just the Estee Lauders of the world, where you're not on the same playing field at all. And I think you guys do an amazing job of, kind of a democratic approach, like you said, from
Yeah.
2 million to, $1 billion still in the room looking at the same challenges.
Yeah, and we try listen, these events are incredibly expensive
Yeah.
to do, and we try and keep it as accessible as we can. Um, but also understanding, I think the community we've built the community, I think, in by 2 levers. One is delivering value. So, for the first 4 years, I did BeautyMatter on the side with 2 people.
Mhm.
Um, and everything was free because I didn't have time to figure out how to
How
collect
to start
money.
ticketing?
Yeah, I mean, I was running other businesses. And then when John Caffarelli came on and I really did this full time, we started building a business under this thing. Um, and we've always been hyper focused on value. Like, I don't care if you just get our free newsletter, you're giving us your time.
Yeah.
Right? So, everything from not wasting people's time to delivering value on people, who are doing sponsored programs with us. The value is really important. So, that's one thing. I think the other thing is providing a level playing field. Um, and I think that comes from the editorial coverage. It comes by way of our awards, like not a popularity contest, can't buy one.
Yeah.
Gotta earn it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
it's the integrity,
hospitality.
the integrity you bring to it, which I think is the real trust and integrity. There's nothing without those
Yeah.
2 things, for staying power.
Yeah.
So,
I think the last thing is really the hospitality part.
yeah.
I think so many of the events are big business for everyone, and sometimes they feel very transactional.
Mm.
For us, we when we went to do it, we deconstructed events like, what do we not like? Well, don't feed people shit food. That's one, right? How can we do goodie bags differently? It never sort of
Like,
felt right.
literally, if no one's ever seen a goodie bag from you, I call it, like, adult Halloween because it is the most insane thing ever.
Yeah. So, and then even from the content, like the content is the superstar, right? And it never really sat well with me that you would charge people all this money for tickets and then you would sell the speaking and
Yeah.
it was just a bunch of advertising. So we just showed up differently. And hospitality played a huge role. I went to lots of beauty events and not coming from big beauty brand, I would be in the corner on my phone pretending I was
Yeah.
very busy, but I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And sometimes those rooms aren't very friendly. So we go through great pains. Um, some of it happens behind the scenes. So our entire team flies in and they know if you see someone in the corner on their phone, they are not working, go talk to them.
Yeah.
And so if you have 20 people navigating a room that way and breaking it up, and now people who come to our events, they know that. They know that it's friendly. People show up with like a different intention.
Oh, for sure.
And so I think though that's like how we built the community.
Yeah. I know, it's amazing. Like I said, the IRL piece is so significant right now when we're screened out, and when you just like you said, if you're paying for this, you wanna have the value, feel at least reciprocal, if not over deliver, right? And I
Listen, just the goodie bag will pay for
oh,
ticket.
1,000%. It's
But
not alone, and I see, everyone leaves with 3 filled to the gills. Okay, we have a quick question of someone asking you to talk about the dupe culture. I know
uh,
that was actually one of my favorite panels you guys had in New York
yeah.
last year that was kind of epic with a little bit of, you threw in an outlier into that panel who kind of blew it up a little bit, which I thought was amazing, but
Well, that was intentional. So the dupe panel is on YouTube. So Christina, one of our editors, said that she wanted to do a panel on dupes, and I said, "Fine, but we're only doing it if we're going to have a real conversation about it. So
amazing.
go find yourself a dupe brand that owns their dupe brand." So M and Co showed up. Find me a dupe brand that kind of is in the middle, and
Mhm.
so that was Dossier. And then find me someone who is anti-dupe, and that was, Jolie. And so it was really interesting because I think one of the things that I love doing is tackling topics that are hard and no one wants to talk about, but I think that people will go there with us because they know we're not looking for that gotcha moment. We just
Totally.
wanna have a conversation.
Yeah,
And our panelists come there the same way, and so when you choose the right people to have the conversation, you can have a heated
yeah,
conversation that
even
is
a discourse,
also
which we need. Yeah,
yeah, which is also respectful.
yeah.
And the funniest thing for me on that dupe panel, and dupes in general, um, is like, I don't know how the beauty industry has gotten holier than thou about dupes because I've seen product development briefs. If you are giving a benchmark, well, you're duping someone,
Totally.
right? So like we all do it. It's part of the product development process very often. Um, and I mean, I think there is a fine line, and I think it cuts a little deeper for indie brands,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
Because
Knock off. Yeah.
so, like, I get it, but I've spent my entire life being knocked off. I'm like, "Just move
Yeah.
faster," right? It's part of business.
Yeah.
Um, I do think, like, some of them get a little too close for comfort, and then that's where, you've gotta use you know, lawyers. Um, but you can't deny the fact that some of these brands are like, I mean, it's $1 billion business. I mean, at the end of the day, Elf is a dupe business. That's how
Yeah.
it was built. Now
Yeah.
it's a marketing machine,
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
but it's a dupe business.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a fine line. They're not going anywhere.
No. And,
Um,
and she made an argument about the person who can't afford the real thing, right? Like you're serving a different audience. But it is, to your point, like a super fine line. I mean, my daughter just goes onto Amazon and says, "This is such and such dupe," and just searches directly, by the dupes of the stuff she wants that she can't afford. But I think it's really, to Ryan's point of like all these guys work so hard to, engineer innovation, et cetera, just to have it turn up on Canal Street, right? Or turn up on wherever. Um,
yeah, but I would say that some of these, I think some of the brands that are the most vocal about it,
mhm.
they're not terribly innovative either, they're just really good marketers. So, you also have to look at what's being duped. Is it product innovation?
Mhm.
Is it marketing? Is it packaging? Is it all of it? Um, I think is a cultural shift from sort of that Gen Z, Gen Alpha they're okay with dupes. Like,
Yeah, that's
I
exactly.
want the real thing,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think it's a generational thing.
yeah, yeah, but they're definitely not going anywhere. You're right. Oh my god, I feel like I could talk to you for like 17 hours of just unpeeling back, layers of the onion that relates to everything in this industry because it is just changing so fast. And what I also love is that you guys you kind of like sound the alarm, around regulation, around things that are happening where sometimes, just what you don't know, but it can be so detrimental to business as well. Those were some of the panels too that, I it wasn't even on my radar, right? Until you hear it for the first
It's
time.
usually when everyone walks out of the room, by the way.
No, there was the one where you're just like, "Guys, this one," and it is true, and it's the legal,
It
it's the
it
regulatory.
it is I think regulatory has become, more increasingly important,
Mhm.
because the regulations the state by state regulatory framework in the US is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Um, but brands are going global sooner and, listen, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think also regulatory has become not just a department. I think it needs to start with product development and marketing and, it now has become cross-functional.
yeah, yeah. No, 1,000%. Oh my god, there's so many we're gonna have to do a part 2, like a part 4 or 5. It was so fun to pick your brain. I haven't had
Yeah,
this chance in a long time, and just a massive fan, watching you build this from day 1 as
and I
I
love the board,
later, and we
so
we adore you, and, so many of our members that are in beauty really, just understand the value of the connections, and I think that's what you bring to the table for sure, and where we're really a bridge to all the ways we can support people in building companies and
yep,
sharing, what's working, what's not, because
yep.
that is the key in a fast moving business and industry, and, just a huge fan and excited for all to come, and I will hit you up for another call. Um,
Anytime.
Love it. Amazing,
Anytime.
my dear. I will see you
Alright.
soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Alright, bye.